Hello and welcome to what is my brand new YouTube channel. In the coming weeks, months and years, I'm hoping to show you a bit more of what's kept me motivated to head out into the landscape and make images for actually over 25 years now. As much as the photography, it's always been about just getting outside, walking, climbing, fresh air, peace and quiet, and the beauty of nature. These are the things that ultimately motivate me to make images. And I would actually prefer to let my imagery and the landscape itself do the talking. So I'm not going to be appearing in front of the camera much, but I will include voiceovers like this, commentary on some of the stills and so on that are relevant to the episode and its footage. I'll also be dropping in regular episodes where I'll cover my post-processing of a selection of images from recent episodes, as well as dipping into my catalogue of photographs taken over the past 21 years as a professional photographer. This week's episode, I'm showing a few images taken in 5 half-day visits to woodlands near the village of Kinver in South Staffordshire. These took place between September, or the end of September, and the first week in December in 2024, covering the period really from the start to the end of autumn, focusing on the beginning and the end rather than the peak. Despite having family connections with Kinver for 35 years, I've not really explored the surroundings with the camera. So this year was the first time I've ever really gone into the woods to actually look at the place properly and make images. And having lived fairly close to Kinver for 8 or 9 years, I didn't really go there that much. I went there to walk with family rather than to photograph, mostly because I try to keep my local photography very local, within walking distance of home, and also because the bits of Kinver Edge I actually walked previously didn't seem to offer the opportunity to escape the crowds, which is really important to me. And because we tended to visit at weekends, it was often really, really busy with dog walkers, horse riders and so on. Again, walking with relatives, you wouldn't walk in poor weather. So I last year decided to go when it was foggy, when it was raining, and enjoy the woodlands in their glory and their autumn kind of splendour on days when perhaps people weren't going to be there. And I'd be able to work with my camera relatively undisturbed. Okay, so this is the first image I want to talk about in a bit more depth. I'm not going to spend too much time simply because I want to dedicate episodes in the future to a kind of a deeper critique of some of my images. But this one, which I'm calling Kinva Edge of Autumn, was one of the images I made on my first visit in this particular season. So the colours were just starting to turn, and really it kind of illustrates one of the things that I really look for in a woodland scene, which is kind of a stage set appearance. Those of you who, like me, grew up watching Disney movies at the cinema may remember the very opening scene of Bambi, and there's this fantastic section where it pans through woodland, and then an opening appears with a view to a waterfall, and then it passes by that. But that section where the waterfall sits there, almost in an oval, it kind of created by the curtains of the trees in the foreground. It's something that I look for a lot in a scene. It's something that draws the eye through and in, but holds the eye and keeps it within the frame as well. So here we've got almost something that looks like egg-shaped centre to the image, a lovely oval, a sense of light behind the curtains that are created by the foreground trees. And I felt when I saw this that it was just kind of perfectly balanced with the two smaller, or on the left hand side the lower branches of a beech tree, and on the right hand side the twiggy kind of shrub, whatever it might be, that comes down on that to complete that arc at the bottom of the frame. And of course we've got a little bit of path leading the eye in as well, perhaps adding a bit of mystery to the scene. It's something that I look for a lot, and as I say, I'll be talking about this a little bit more in a future episode. Okay, image number 2, Sunpool Vale Rock. So those of you who know my photography know that I started out pretty much as I started out actually 35mm film, and then I migrated pretty quickly to medium format with the Pentax 6.7, and then within 6 months of that, inspired by the work of Joe Cornish, David Ward, Paul Wakefield in particular, I took up large format photography, 5x4 inch film photography, and so with that style of photography, the aim really in the landscape is to get front to back sharpness using camera movements. And while there are cameras, and I've used cameras and adapters to do that, and lenses of course to do that on a modern digital camera, what I've done more recently, mostly to lighten the load of my bag and make things a bit more simple and allow me to react to light quicker, because that's one thing that I found frustrating with large format, is often the light would happen and by the time the camera was set up it had gone again. So I regularly these days in a wider landscape like this will focus stack an image, which is, I'm sure most of you are aware, but it's basically this image is made up of 3 exposures, and one was basically focused on the foreground rock, one was focused on the mid-ground trees, one was focused on the hills at the back. So you've got, and then obviously blended in Photoshop. What I've been doing recently along with that is actually exposure bracketing as well. So there were filters used in this, as you would have noticed in the captions, but I also sometimes these days will exposure bracket as part of the focus stacking regime. So I will focus the foreground, but also expose for the foreground, allow a little bit of light into those dark areas, focus the mid-ground, perhaps my middle exposure technically and tonally as well, and we'll also then expose again differently for the image that's focused at the back to allow me to capture detail in the sky, as well as using grads. So there's a little bit of bracketing in all different ways, all happening at the same time. But this image here was the sandstone rock outcrops that occur around this part of Staffordshire, and of course the lovely colours, and just as a kind of the passage of sunlight through the scene. So it's something I wanted to capture a little bit, essence of the geology of the area. Unfortunately, some of the graffiti of the area as well, but I think this kind of sums up some of the topography, I suppose, of that area around Kinver and between that and the River Severn. And again, this is something I'll come back to on a future episode, where I want to talk a little bit more about my workflow around using neutral density graduated filters, and also the kind of new technique I'm using and developing with regard to exposure bracketing along with focus stacking. So this third image is really fairly simple idea, but similar to the first one, maybe with a kind of a sense of a line that leads you in and through the image, with the path being the natural kind of course for the eye to follow. But really, these birch woods to me are some of the best I've found, certainly in Shropshire and Staffordshire. I know there are areas and patches of them around, but these are kind of almost comparable in quality, obviously not in size, but in quality to the birches in Glenafric or near Ballater, near Braemar, on the kind of eastern side of the Cairngorms. There's some great birch woodland there as well. And near Aviemore, Craigellachie, I used to go and explore those woods quite regularly. So these were quite a joy to find, really, because they reminded me very much of those natural birch forests that I found and used to enjoy in Scotland. For me, it's all about the energy of autumn, the kind of effervescent, fizzy kind of colours of fresh yellows, limes, lime greens, and then the kind of juxtaposition of that with the ochres and the purpley kind of hues of the dying bracken. So it's really colour contrast, a little bit of the kind of skeletal forms of the tree showing through the foliage. And then there's that pathway leading the eye through and back round. It doesn't take you anywhere in particular, it just takes you through the scene and into it, and not out of it, which is a key thing. It's really important that your eye is held within the frames. So that's something I would often look for in a woodland scene. Another thing I like to do regularly in woodland is kind of make tree portraits. And the woods around Kinver Edge and Kingsford Country Park and the Million, which is another one of the woods nearby I visited, are full of really characterful oaks, as well as the birches and the beeches that blanket the hills. But on this occasion, it's walking down a forest ride at Kingsford Country Park, and this larch stood out to me. The foliage at the top still hanging on, but lower down it's denuded now, and all the needles have fallen off. And that kind of opened a window into the woods. It's something that it gives it a little bit of depth. You can see a chink of light at the very back of the woodland, and I kind of thought it's like literally a window through into the dense plantation of fir and larch that there was in this particular part of the woodland, but of course framed again by a lovely combination of beech and birch and a pine, of course, in the top right corner as well. So you've got really lovely textures, some lovely rich lush end of autumn colour, and this sense of kind of mystery again created by this aperture into what are kind of ranks and ranks of upright tree trunks in the background. So again, it's something that catches my eye, and often I'll stop and make a portrait image like this. Well, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. As I mentioned earlier, there'll be more in-depth critique and technique episodes to come, probably starting in 3 or 4 weeks' time. I'm going to leave you now with some more images from these particular sessions, along with a bit of music. And if you can, please like and subscribe the channel. Thank you very much.